Saint Luke was born as Valentine Felixovich Voyno-Yasenetsky in Kerch, so he was born in the Ukraine. And he has an interesting story, because a lot of times we say, oh, here in the West, it's very hard for us to reach our potential and become saints, as St. Paul calls us to, and as Christ calls us to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. He was a child of a mixed marriage. And his Orthodox mother wasn't particularly Orthodox. So, all right, pause. Please forgive me, I'm not your parish priest, and I'm not, stepping on Father Timothy's toes.
Go for it.
We respect each other and love each other, and we work closely together. So I'm very mindful of that. But let's stop the excuses, right? It doesn't matter if we live in Australia, and if everyone around us is an atheist, right? And if my parents don't go to church. Atheist world, non-believing parents, and one of the greatest saints of the 20th century, right? So can we just quit making excuses for ourselves? We are called to be saints, and the saint shows us how to do it. Moved to Kiev, a bigger city, as a young boy, and very gifted. And he was a talented artist throughout his life, and a lot of his sketches are still used in anatomy classes. So he went to art school. He was a fine practitioner of the fine arts. And as a kid, he would visit the Kiev caves Lavra, which is a source of controversy today, because one branch of Ukrainian Orthodoxy has claimed it from the branch that it belonged to for nearly 1,000 years. But he would go there to the Kiev caves, and the Kiev caves are famous for the incorrupt relics of saints that were buried where they passed, where they reposed. So they were just left there. It's like a monastery, church, monastic facilities aside, it's like a never-ending catacomb where the relics of saints remain incorrupt. And he would go there and he would draw the monks, and he would make sketches of these things. And so as much as he loved art, as much as he enrolled in law school and was flying through both of these, growing up, he had those same questions that we have. Is life really about me just doing what I like? I love drawing. I could make lots of money. I'm a lawyer. I'm very good at it. He topped his class. He won many awards throughout his life, even from Stalin. So he started to think, and he decided, well, that's not what life is. There's more to life than me doing what I like, what I want, and what I'm good at. And so he dropped out of law school. He stopped following his arts courses, and he enrolled in medicine. And he was truly a trailblazer. His innovations in local anesthesia are still used today. I remember years ago learning about the saint's life. I actually thought this was a bit of a myth, to make the saint bigger than he was. But no, the reality is that his work on local anesthetic is still used. He transplanted the kidney of an ox into a person in World War I. And in the day before anti-rejection medication, the person survived. Because there was anti-rejection medication in his prayers. His essays on operations where there is an infection, and a pyogenic infection in particular, where there's pus, his work is still used. Like his little treatise is the manual, right? So it's quite interesting. I was a bit skeptical because you read some lives of saints and you know that through the generations we've all added our bit. You know, we all met Saint George at Crow's Nest, and by the end of it, you know, man, he walked on water for 16 kilometers. You know, people were hungry, so he was just sticking his hand in the ocean and catching fish. And we start to diminish the saint with our exaggeration. But the saint, I looked into this, and that's the reality. During the Russo-Japanese War, I think it was 1904 to 1907 or thereabouts, maybe even prior, at the end of the 1800s, 1896 comes to mind, but he would have been a very young man at that point. He would have been only 19. So he was just working continually in the hospitals, and very successful because he never operated without an icon of Banahia above the operating theatre. And the first thing he did when he started, after, you know, putting on the gloves and following all procedures, all protocols, medical protocols, with the iodine, he would make the sign of the cross on the patient. And you can see him there, that's him on the far left, prior to his being ordained a priest in the operating theatre. And it was recorded that once he said, a surgeon must have the eyes of an eagle, the heart of a lion, and the hands of a woman. And when his children had spoken to him about this, so was speaking about, you know, good eyesight to be able to perform surgery, and although he lost his sight at the end of his life because of the suffering and exposure that he endured, he was still able to treat people. The heart of a lion, because you need to be brave, and the hands of a woman, because you need to have that sensitivity. And maybe people today in the Western world would be offended by what he said. But when his children questioned him on what he meant, he took 20 pieces of fine paper, and he said to one of his grandchildren, pick a number, and his little grandson said 7, and so he takes a scalpel, he feels the 20 sheets of paper, and then with one slice makes an incision and tells his grandson to count. His grandson just counts 7 sheets, the 8th one wasn't cut. So he wasn't doing that to show off. He was trying to show us that when we have faith in God and we do things for his glory, they always work. Even if I look like a fool in the process, in the eyes of the world, even if I'm martyred, God is glorified. So he was very skilled at what he did. And we know that in Przemysław Zaleski, he performed 650 to 1,000 surgeries a year during that period, right? Often taking on those operations that other surgeons couldn't do or thought were too risky to do.